Ambassador Quan walked slowly through the ancient archives, his footsteps echoing in the vast empty halls. Dust covered everything like a grey blanket. The old records sat in neat rows, waiting for someone to remember them. Most people in the galaxy had forgotten what these papers meant. 3,000 years ago, when the stars were young and species were learning to travel between worlds, one rule was written in stone. It was carved into every treaty, burned into every law, and whispered in every diplomatic meeting. The rule was simple: never wake the humans. Quan stopped at a massive data terminal and pressed his hand against the scanner. The screen flickered to life, showing documents that made his blood run cold. Pictures of destroyed fleets. Reports of entire armies vanishing overnight. Stories of weapons that could crack planets in half. All of this had happened 800 years ago, when humanity fought the Great War that nearly ended everything. The war had lasted only 3 years, but those 3 years changed the galaxy forever. When it was over, the humans did something no one expected. They went home. Not just to Earth. They gathered all their people from across the galaxy and moved them to 12 small systems at the edge of space. Then they built a wall of silence around themselves and disappeared from galactic life completely. The young species called it surrender. The old ones knew better. In the Terran systems, Commander Yuna sat at her monitoring station high above Earth. Through her enhanced eyes, she could see things that normal people could not. Her vision showed her ships moving through space millions of miles away. She could count the stars and read the energy patterns of alien engines. Every day, she watched ships from other species come close to human space. They sent small scout vessels to test the borders. They dropped listening devices near the outer planets. Some even tried to land on the empty worlds that humans had left behind. Yuna watched it all and said nothing. The humans had rules about this. They would watch. They would wait. But they would not speak. On Earth below, President Juan read the daily reports in her office deep underground. The reports told her everything that happened in human space and beyond. They told her about alien probe ships and spy satellites. They told her about the young species that laughed at the old warnings. What the reports did not say was how much humanity had changed in 800 years of silence. When the humans first retreated to their 12 systems, they were tired. They were angry. They had seen too much death and caused too much destruction. So they made a promise to themselves. They would use their time alone to become better. They cured every disease. They fixed every genetic flaw. They enhanced their bodies and expanded their minds. A human could now live for thousands of years and think faster than any computer. They could see across star systems and move objects with their thoughts alone. Their technology grew in ways that seemed like magic. Ships that could hide in plain sight. Weapons that could destroy targets from across the galaxy. Defensive systems that made their worlds invisible to outside eyes. But most importantly, they learned to work together as one mind. Every human was connected to every other human through networks of thought and feeling. When one human learned something new, they all learned it. When one human felt pain, they all shared it. This was why the death of even one human mattered so much. It was why they had retreated from the galaxy rather than rule it. They had become something beyond what other species could understand. Dr. Heian worked in her laboratory on Mars, creating new forms of life that could survive in any environment. Her research could have healed every world in the galaxy or destroyed them all completely. She chose to heal only human worlds. Captain Jiho trained his crews on the massive ships hidden in the asteroid fields around Jupiter. These ships were larger and more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen. They could move faster than light itself and strike targets with perfect accuracy. But they stayed hidden, waiting for orders that might never come. The galaxy continued to grow and change around them. New species discovered space travel and joined the Galactic Confederation. Trade routes expanded. Wars began and ended. Politicians made speeches about progress and peace. And through it all, the humans watched. They saw the Zephyrian Empire growing stronger and more aggressive. They watched as young species forgot the old warnings and called them myths. They listened to debates in the Confederation about whether humans even still existed. Some days, President Juan wondered if they should reveal themselves. Show the galaxy that humanity was still alive and more powerful than ever. But then she would remember the old wars and the billions who had died. She would remember why they had chosen silence. The monitoring stations around human space detected thousands of probe attempts every year. Small ships trying to map human worlds. Spy satellites trying to penetrate their defenses. Scientists trying to understand why the humans had vanished. All of these attempts failed. The human defenses were perfect and invisible. But they were also patient. The humans could have destroyed every probe instantly. Instead, they simply made them malfunction and drift away. Better to seem weak than to reveal their strength. Ambassador Quan closed the ancient files and walked back through the empty archives. Outside, the galaxy continued its busy life of trade and politics and small wars. Species rose and fell. Empires expanded and collapsed. But in their 12 quiet systems, the humans waited. They had learned patience in their long sleep. They had grown strong in their silence. And deep in their connected minds, they all shared the same thought. The galaxy had forgotten the rule. Someday, someone would break it. And when that day came, the humans would be ready to remind everyone why some giants choose to sleep. Emperor Taiho stood in his war room, looking at the giant map that covered the entire wall. The map showed every star, every planet, every trade route in the galaxy. His yellow eyes focused on one small area marked in red, the human systems. For months, his advisors had been telling him the same thing. Those 12 systems were the richest in the galaxy. They had the best planets, the strongest resources, and the safest trade routes. And they were empty. Wasted on a species that had disappeared 800 years ago. "My Emperor," said General Vexen, his scales clicking as he moved closer to the map. "Our scouts report no activity in the human zone. No ships, no communications, no signs of life. It is time we claimed what should be ours." Taiho smiled, showing his sharp teeth. The Zephyrian Empire had grown strong by taking what it wanted. They had conquered 4 to 7 worlds in the past century. What were 12 more empty systems? "Begin the colonization," he ordered. "I want mining operations on every valuable world. I want military bases on every strategic planet. The age of empty space is over." The Zephyrian fleets moved like a dark tide across space. Massive ships filled with soldiers and miners and builders. They entered the buffer zones around human space without fear. After all, who was left to stop them? The first thing they found were the warning buoys. Ancient satellites that had been floating in space for centuries, broadcasting the same message over and over: "This is human space. Turn back now. This is your only warning." The Zephyrian captains laughed at the old recordings. They destroyed the buoys with their weapon systems and kept moving forward. On Earth, alarms began ringing for the first time in 800 years. Admiral Doyun had been sleeping when the emergency call came. Like all humans, he could feel the disturbance in the shared network of minds that connected his people. Something was wrong. Something was happening at the borders. He dressed quickly and made his way to the War Council chambers deep under the city of Geneva. The chamber had not been used since the end of the Great War. Now it filled with officers who had trained for centuries but had never expected to fight. "Report," Doyun said as he took his seat at the ancient table. Colonel Myra stood up, her cybernetic eyes glowing as she accessed the sensor networks. "Zephyrian forces have entered the preserve. They have established mining operations on Kepler 442b and military bases on Ross 128b and Wolf 359c. Total invasion force, approximately 50,000 ships and 2 million personnel." The room fell silent. For 800 years, no alien had set foot on a human world. The treaty that ended the Great War had been clear. Human space was forbidden. Sacred. Untouchable. "Send them the final warning," President Juan ordered through the communication network. Her voice reached every human mind at the same time. The message that went out to the Zephyrian fleet was simple and direct. It was broadcast in every known language and sent through every possible channel. "Withdraw immediately from human space. This is your only warning. Leave now or face the consequences." Emperor Taiho received the message while dining in his palace. He was eating the flesh of a creature from his latest conquered world when his communication officer brought him the human transmission. Taiho listened to the message and began to laugh. The sound echoed through his dining hall, causing his servants to tremble. "What can a handful of primitives do to the might of the Zephyrian Empire?" he broadcast back. "We take what we want. And we want your worlds." But the Zephyrians wanted more than just empty planets. They had heard stories about human technology from the old wars. They wanted to find it, study it, and use it for themselves. This is what led them to Research Station Harmony. The station was hidden in the asteroid belt of the Vega system. It had been abandoned during the human retreat 800 years ago, but Zephyrian sensors detected old energy readings there. They thought they might find ancient weapons or ship designs. What they found instead were people. Dr. Suhyun had been working at the station with her team of researchers. They were scientists, not soldiers. They studied stellar formation and cosmic radiation. They had families on Earth and children who drew pictures of stars. When the Zephyrian ships surrounded the station, Dr. Suhyun tried to explain that they were peaceful researchers. She offered to share their scientific data. She begged them to let her people go home. Captain Zorex of the Zephyrian Assault Fleet had different orders. His emperor wanted all human technology seized and all human personnel eliminated. No witnesses could remain to tell the galaxy that the Zephyrians had broken the ancient treaty. The attack lasted only minutes. The research station had no weapons, no shields, no way to defend itself. Dr. Suhyun managed to send one final message to Earth before the station was destroyed. Tell our families we love them. Tell our children to remember the stars. 847 humans died that day. Scientists and engineers and doctors and teachers. People who had never held a weapon or harmed another living being. Among them were 12 children who had been visiting the station with their parents. When the news reached Earth, something changed in the collective human mind. The network that connected all human thoughts fell silent for exactly 1 minute. It was the first time in centuries that every human had stopped thinking at exactly the same moment. President Huan felt the silence like a physical pain. She stood in the War Council chamber, surrounded by officers who had tears in their enhanced eyes. The long peace is over, she announced. Her words traveled through the network to every human mind in the 12 systems. 800 years of isolation and restraint ended in that moment. Admiral Doyun began giving orders to ships that had been hidden for centuries. Captain Jiho received deployment instructions for fleets that no alien had ever seen. Dr. Heian activated weapon systems that could reshape reality itself. The humans were awake now. And they were angry. The shipyards of Mars had been sleeping under the planet's red surface for 8 centuries. Now they opened like giant metal flowers blooming in the darkness. Massive doors that had been sealed since the Great War split apart with thunderous groans. Steam hissed from ancient systems coming back to life. Captain Jiho stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the awakening. Around him, 200 vessels emerged from their hidden berths. Each ship was longer than a city and wider than a mountain. They moved with impossible grace for something so large, floating up from the underground factories like dreams made real. The ship he commanded was called the Retribution. It had been built during the long sleep, designed by minds that had 800 years to perfect every detail. Its hull was made from materials that did not exist when humans first went to war. Its weapons could reach across star systems to strike targets with perfect accuracy. All ships report ready, Captain, said Commander Swa from her station. Her fingers moved over controls that responded to her thoughts as much as her touch. The ship systems were connected directly to her enhanced brain, making her reactions faster than any computer. Around them, the rest of the fleet finished their preparations. These were not the crude warships that humans had used in the ancient battles. These vessels could bend space and time. They could hide in dimensions that other species did not know existed. They could strike without warning and vanish without trace. Admiral Kyong had planned their approach carefully. The human fleet would not sneak to their target like thieves in the night. They would arrive openly, in full view of every sensor in the galaxy. The entire universe would witness what happened when you broke the one rule that mattered. The Zephyrian homeworld called itself the Heart of Empire. It was a massive planet covered in golden cities and protected by the strongest defense fleet in known space. 2,037 warships guarded the approaches to the world. Orbital weapons platforms bristled around every moon. Energy shields covered the entire system like a protective bubble. General Vexen was reviewing the daily security reports when his sensors detected the human fleet. At first, he thought it was a mistake. The readings showed ships that were impossibly large and moving at speeds that broke the laws of physics. "Sir," called his sensor operator, his voice shaking with fear. 200 unknown vessels approaching from the outer system. They are not using any known propulsion method. Their energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. General Vexen looked at the tactical display and felt his blood turn cold. The approaching ships were not following normal space lanes. They were moving through solid matter as if it did not exist. They passed through asteroids and moons without slowing down. "All ships to battle stations," he ordered. "Prepare for combat. Send word to the Emperor." Emperor Taiho was in his throne room when the message reached him. He had been planning the next phase of his expansion into human territory. Maps covered his walls showing the worlds he would claim and the resources he would steal. "My Emperor," General Vexen's image appeared on the communication screen. "We have a problem. The humans are here." Taiho laughed at first. "Impossible. The humans are gone. They have been hiding in their little corner of space for 8 centuries. See for yourself." Vexen transmitted the sensor readings. Taiho's laughter died in his throat. The ships on his screen were larger than his capital vessels. Their design was unlike anything he had ever seen. They moved with purpose and power that made his own fleet look like toys. Captain Jiho opened a communication channel that reached every world in the galaxy. His message was simple and clear: you were warned. The battle began immediately. The Zephyrian fleet launched everything they had. Antimatter missiles streaked across space in brilliant lines of destruction. Plasma cannons fired beams that could melt entire cities. Quantum torpedoes exploded with the force of small stars. The human response was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human ships did not dodge the incoming weapons. They simply absorbed them. Energy shields that seemed to be made of liquid light turned the most powerful attacks into harmless sparks. When plasma beams struck their hulls, the ships grew brighter and stronger. Then the humans began to fight back. Weapons emerged from the human ships that had no names in any alien language. Beams of pure force that ignored shields and armor. Missiles that could think and learn and adapt to any defense. Energy fields that reached out like invisible hands to crush enemy vessels. Commander Swar watched the tactical display as Zephyrian ships simply disappeared. Not destroyed, erased. As if they had never existed at all. Time to target elimination, 14 minutes remaining, she reported calmly. Captain Jiho felt no joy in the destruction. Through the network that connected all human minds, he could sense the sadness of his people. They had not wanted this war. They had hoped for peace. But when peace was denied, they would ensure the lesson was learned. A Zephyrian dreadnought tried to ram the Retribution. The massive alien ship was the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons and armor. It struck the human vessel at full speed. The human ship did not even shake. The Zephyrian dreadnought crumpled like paper against an invisible barrier. Its hull folded in on itself until nothing remained but scattered atoms. General Vexen sent desperate messages to every ship in his fleet. Retreat. All ships retreat. This is not a battle we can win. But there was nowhere to retreat to. The human ships had surrounded the entire system in 17 minutes. Every escape route was blocked. Every hiding place was watched. The last Zephyrian ship died exactly 17 minutes after the battle began. Not a single human vessel had taken damage. Not one human life had been lost. Captain Jiho opened another galaxy-wide communication channel. This time, President Huan's image appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. This is not conquest, she said, her voice calm and terrible. This is correction. For 800 years, we chose peace. We hoped you would do the same. You chose otherwise. Now you will learn why your ancestors feared the dark between the stars. The human fleet began to move toward the next Zephyrian system. The real war was just beginning. Fleet Admiral Minho did not think about what he was doing as war. War was what happened when two armies of similar strength fought each other. War had winners and losers. War had uncertainty. This was mathematics. From his command ship floating in deep space, Minho calculated the exact force needed to dismantle the Zephyrian Empire piece by piece. Every military base, every weapons factory, every government building, all of it had to go. But it had to be done with perfect precision. The humans had learned something important during their 800 years of silence. Destruction was easy. Anyone could blow up a planet or kill 1 billion people. But removing only the right targets while leaving everything else untouched, that required true skill. Target analysis complete, reported Commander Rena from her tactical station. Her enhanced mind was connected to scanning systems that could see through solid rock and read the thoughts of alien computers. Military Academy on Proxima 7. 3,000 officers in training. 0 civilians on base. Approved, Minho said quietly. Eliminate military capability. Preserve all non-combatants. The strike came from nowhere. One moment the Zephyrian Military Academy stood proud on its mountain plateau, training the next generation of Imperial officers. The next moment, every weapon was molten slag. Every computer system was fried. Every piece of military equipment had simply stopped existing. But the buildings remained untouched. The students were unharmed. Only their ability to make war had been removed with surgical precision. Captain Minji led a different kind of mission. His ships were equipped with weapons that most species thought were impossible. They could reach inside a star and change how it burned. They could make a sun flare at exactly the right moment to sterilize only military targets. The Zephyrian fortress world of Kepler Prime had been built inside an asteroid. The entire rock was hollow, filled with weapons and soldiers. It orbited close to a red giant star that provided power for the base. Minji's team did not attack the asteroid. Instead, they whispered to the star itself. The red giant suddenly blazed brighter. A tongue of solar fire reached out like a careful finger and touched only the military sections of the asteroid base. In 3 seconds, every weapon was vapor. Every computer was melted. Every piece of armor was dust. The civilian miners who lived in the other parts of the asteroid were completely safe. They did not even know what had happened until their military commanders stopped answering communications. Dr. Heian worked from her laboratory ships, creating things that seemed like magic to other species. Her nanoplagues were microscopic machines smaller than viruses. They could tell the difference between military and civilian equipment by reading the molecular structure of metal and plastic. When she released her creations on Zephyrian supply worlds, something amazing happened. Every tank rusted away in minutes. Every missile fell apart. Every military uniform dissolved into harmless dust. But civilian clothes, civilian vehicles, and civilian tools remained perfectly fine. The Zephyrian soldiers found themselves standing naked and defenseless while their families watched from windows, completely unharmed. The quantum viruses that Dr. Heian had perfected were even more terrifying. They could reach into computer systems and rewrite reality itself. When her viruses infected the Zephyrian fleet databases, the ship's own computers began to believe they were civilian vessels. Weapon systems shut down because the ships no longer remembered they had weapons. Navigation computers refused to plot courses to military targets. Communication arrays started broadcasting children's songs instead of battle orders. Emperor Taiho watched his empire crumble from his palace throne room. Reports came in every hour, each one more impossible than the last. Entire fleets had surrendered without firing a shot. Military worlds had been stripped of all defenses in minutes. His greatest generals were sending messages of defeat from ships that no longer recognized them as soldiers. "How is this possible?" he screamed at his advisors. "They are only humans. We destroyed their research station. We killed their people." His chief scientist, Dr. Zarkin, trembled as he delivered his report. "My emperor, I believe we made a terrible mistake. The humans we killed were not their military. They were scientists studying stars. We murdered civilians." "So what?" Taiho snarled. "They were still humans." "Sir," Dr. Zarkin continued, his voice barely a whisper, "I have been analyzing the human weapons. They are not using technology we understand. They are using forces we did not know existed. I think we may have awakened something that was better left sleeping." The Galactic Confederation tried desperately to stop what was happening. Ambassador Quan led a peace delegation to the edge of human space, hoping to negotiate some kind of ceasefire. The human response came from President Huan herself. Her image appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, her words broadcast to every inhabited world. "You all knew the rule," she said, her voice calm but filled with terrible power. "For 3,000 years, every species in this galaxy has known one simple fact: do not wake the humans. You all chose to forget. Your governments ignored the warnings. Your leaders called our treaties obsolete." She paused, and in that silence, entire star systems held their breath. The Zephyrian Empire broke the treaty. They entered our space. They destroyed our property. They murdered our people. But more than that, they murdered our children. 12 children died in their attack on Research Station Harmony. Children who had never hurt anyone. Children who wanted only to learn about the stars. President Huan's image leaned forward, and her enhanced eyes seemed to look directly at every person watching. "This is not about conquest. This is not about territory. This is about ensuring that no one ever forgets again why some rules exist. The Zephyrian Empire will end. Every species that supported their aggression will face consequences. And when it is over, the galaxy will remember why your ancestors wrote one simple rule into every treaty: never wake the humans." The systematic destruction of the Zephyrian Empire continued with mathematical precision. Every act of aggression was answered. Every crime was punished. Every threat was eliminated. But not one innocent life was lost. That was the most terrifying thing of all. 6 months had passed since the first human ship appeared over the Zephyrian homeworld. Now Ambassador Quan stood in what used to be Emperor Taiho's throne room, watching human engineers carefully remove the last symbols of imperial power. The palace was empty but undamaged. The golden walls still gleamed. The carved pillars still reached toward the painted ceiling. Everything was exactly as it had been, except for one important detail: there was no more empire to rule from this room. Quan had seen many wars in his long life, but nothing like this. Usually when one species conquered another, cities burned and populations fled. Buildings collapsed and cultures disappeared. But the humans had done something different. They had removed only the ability to make war, leaving everything else untouched. Every Zephyrian military base was gone. Every weapons factory had been dismantled. Every government building that had been used to plan aggression was now empty. But the hospitals still worked. The schools still taught children. The farms still grew food. The ordinary people went about their lives as if nothing had changed. Because for them, nothing had changed. Only the war makers were gone. President Juan arrived on the former Zephyrian capital aboard the massive ship Retribution. She did not come as a conqueror demanding tribute. She did not claim the throne or plant human flags on the palace walls. Instead, she stood on the ship's observation deck and spoke to the entire galaxy through broadcasts that reached every inhabited world. "We returned to sleep once before," she said, her voice carrying across light years to billions of listeners. "We hoped you had learned wisdom from the old wars. We hoped you understood why the treaties existed. We hoped you would choose peace." Behind her, the ruins of the Zephyrian war fleet drifted silently in space. Not ruins, exactly, more like carefully disassembled puzzles. The ships were still there, but they could no longer fight. Their weapons had been turned into harmless metal. Their engines had been converted to power civilian systems. "You chose differently," President Juan continued. "The Zephyrian Empire decided that our isolation was weakness. They thought our silence meant we were gone. They broke the one rule that kept the galaxy safe. And when we tried to warn them, they killed our children." The camera view changed to show images of Research Station Harmony before its destruction. Dr. Suhyun and her team working peacefully in their laboratories. The 12 children who had been visiting that day, drawing pictures of stars and asking questions about the universe. 847 people died because one empire thought the old warnings were lies. Scientists, teachers, engineers, doctors, children who wanted to learn about the cosmos. They died because someone decided to test whether humans still existed. President Juan's image returned to the screen. Her enhanced eyes seemed to look directly at every person watching, no matter what world they lived on. "Now you know we exist. Now you know we remember everything. The lesson is written in fire across the stars where the Zephyrian war fleet used to patrol. Every species that supported their aggression has learned the same lesson. Every government that ignored the old treaties has been reminded why they were written." But the humans were not finished. They had learned something important during their centuries of watching the galaxy from their hidden systems. Peace was not something that happened by accident. Peace required constant attention. Commander Yuna returned to her monitoring station above Earth, but her job had changed completely. Instead of watching alien probes test human borders, she now coordinated a galaxy-wide surveillance network that the humans had built in a matter of weeks. 7,000 monitoring stations appeared throughout space, hidden in asteroids and gas clouds and the dark between stars. Each station could watch entire star systems and detect the smallest military movements. If any species began building weapons for conquest, the humans would know about it before the weapons were finished. Lieutenant Yunya worked beside Commander Yuna, managing the data streams that flowed in from across the galaxy. "Every major trade route is covered," she reported. "Every military shipyard is under observation. Every government that has ever shown aggressive tendencies is being watched." The message was clear without being spoken. The humans were no longer sleeping. They were awake and paying attention to everything that happened in their galaxy. Captain Jiho took his ship Retribution on patrol routes that had never existed before. Human vessels now moved through space along paths that other species could not see or predict. They appeared without warning near military exercises that seemed too large. They observed weapons tests that looked too dangerous. They made themselves known just enough to remind everyone that they were watching. But they did not interfere unless they had to. When the Altarian Republic began building planet-killer missiles, a human ship simply appeared in their solar system. It did not attack. It did not threaten. It just sat there in space, watching. The Altarians stopped building the missiles and started building schools instead. Ambassador Quan had a new job now. He was no longer trying to maintain old treaties that people had forgotten. Instead, he was teaching young diplomats about the new reality of galactic politics. "The first rule is still the same," he told his students in the rebuilt Galactic Confederation headquarters. "Do not wake the humans. But now there is a second rule that is just as important. The humans are already awake. They are watching everything you do. Every ship you build, every weapon you test, every aggressive thought your leaders think, they know about it." One of his students raised her hand. She was young and had grown up after the Zephyrian War. "Teacher, are we prisoners now? Are the humans our masters?" Quan smiled sadly. "No, child. We are free to do anything we want. We can trade and explore and build and grow. We can have art and music and love and joy. The humans do not want to rule us. They just want to make sure we never again choose to rule each other through violence. He pointed to a star chart on the wall that showed the trade routes and communication networks that connected thousands of worlds. The humans sleep, but they dream. And in their dreams, they count every ship, every weapon, every act of aggression. When they wake, they remember everything. This is not a threat. It is a promise. The galaxy is at peace because someone is making sure it stays that way. Outside the window, stars glittered in the endless night. And somewhere in that darkness, human ships continued their silent patrol, watching over a galaxy that had finally learned wisdom. Some giants choose to sleep. Wise civilizations let them dream in peace.